One of the things that we've done is taking old shoes and put tags with the names of Iraqis and the date of their death, and putting them in public places, like in front of libraries, at schools, at post offices, once again to remind people of the terrible toll of over 1 million Iraqis who have died since the U.S. invasion, of the millions of Iraqis who have been forced to flee their homes. We take this message into the halls of Congress. As you can see here, we're in the office of one of the Congress people in Washington, D.C., dressed as, quote, collateral damage with blood and bandages. We have been successful in bringing some Iraqi women to the United States. In fact, this was an occasion where we brought 6 Iraqi women and took them on a speaking tour to 100 cities around the United States to hear their stories. And the most important message they were saying is, we are a people of thousands of generations of culture. We think that unlike the new nation of the United States, we have had many times in our history where we have violent episodes, and we have come together as a people to solve that. Let us solve our own problems. Leave our country. We also have taken groups to Iraq, and we stopped doing it 2 years ago when it became way too dangerous to go. But for the first several years of the invasion, we took groups to Iraq, and the picture you're seeing here is an extraordinary delegation of people who lost their children as soldiers fighting in Iraq. The man in the front, Fernando Suarez de Solad, lost his son in the very first month of the invasion of Iraq. The women you see in the back lost their children, and the gray-haired woman you see in the back row actually called us when she heard that we were organizing this delegation. She said, I didn't lose my child in Iraq. I lost my child, who was a firefighter, on September 11th. And I see the United States invading Iraq justifying that invasion because of the losses of people like my son. And I want to go to Iraq to tell the people that this is not being done in my name. And so she joined us on this extraordinary trip where we took thousands and thousands of dollars worth of aid to the children of Iraq. And we returned about 6 months later, taking $650,000 worth of aid to the people of Fallujah after the U.S. military destroyed almost the entire town. And we spent time talking to people about their losses, as this sheikh who lived in Fallujah was an example of a victim when the U.S. military came in the middle of the night and started knocking down the doors. They knocked down the door of his home. This man's son, terrified, ran to get his wife and children, and the U.S. military, seeing him running, took out their guns and shot him point blank, killed his son. The man is holding up a picture of his grandchildren, and as he told us while he was crying, every day his children keep saying, Baba, 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 where is my father, where is my father? And this sheikh, who is a religious leader, said to us, I don't want to hate anybody, but imagine how I felt after the U.S. military knocked down the doors and killed my son. How do you think it makes us feel towards the occupiers? And what do you think I tell people when they come to the mosque to pray? And so, to get this message out into the halls of Congress, we at Code Pink decided to rent a house on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., so that we could go every single day to Congress with that message. And I invite you to join us, men and women alike, because we need people there every day. We need to remind them that this war that they continue to fund is a war that is not supported by the majority of the people. And the only way they keep getting away with it is because they don't hear from us enough. We work with wonderful Congress people, as in this picture, Barbara Lee, the only person that said no to war after 9/11. Lynn Woolsey, the congresswoman who heads the Out of Iraq Caucus. But there are also a number of women in the Congress and the Senate that Code Pink has put particular pressure on, one of them being Senator Hillary Clinton. We had a campaign focusing on her ever since she made her first terrible mistake of voting for war in 2002. And for years, we had a campaign called Listen Hillary, where we followed her around wherever she was speaking at public events, wherever she was holding press conferences, as well as in her New York offices in the halls of Congress, telling her that her vote was a terrible mistake and she must change her policy. Here you see a good example of when we can't get into the spaces where she is speaking. This one was a $2,300 a plate fundraiser. We actually became the caterers, so we wore white suits. We put a box of cookies on a plate, and we walked right into the kitchen and waited for the right moment and came out here with a sign saying, "We need a peace president, stop the war." I must say this pressure has had some effects because Hillary Clinton has indeed changed her tune since the earlier days. She now votes against funding for the war. She now votes for a timeline for withdrawal because she knows when she goes out there campaigning that that is what the majority of people want to hear. We have also put a lot of pressure on the Congresswoman from my hometown, Nancy Pelosi, because we felt that when she became Speaker of the House that things were going to change. That was our opportunity, we thought, to stop this disastrous war, to stop the funding for the war, and to put impeachment back on the table in the United States of America. We were deeply disappointed when one of the first things that she said as Speaker of the House is that she would not cut funds from the war and that impeachment would not be on her table. So we go to her San Francisco home on a regular basis. We set up a table outside her home and we put impeachment on her table. We have also camped out outside her home, literally sleeping on that sidewalk for weeks at a time when she is, quote, on vacation back home. And she has been so annoyed by Code Pink that once when Amy Goodman had a chance to talk to her, Amy Goodman asked her, who is it harder to deal with, the Republican Party or Code Pink? And Nancy Pelosi just went off on Code Pink, not giving her even her privacy. And we say to her, what privacy do the people in Iraq now have? What homes do the people in Iraq have now? Millions of them are displaced and have no homes. So we're sorry, Nancy Pelosi, if we are invading your private space, but we demand more of you. We demand that you use your power of the purse and don't put any legislation on the floor of the House that will allow for more funding for this war. That's the way that Nancy Pelosi could stop the war tomorrow. You might have seen this picture that has become iconic of the struggle between those of us who want peace and those of us who continue war. This is a picture of Condoleezza Rice when she went to speak before Congress. And the woman who runs our Code Pink house in Washington, D.C., Desiree Feruz, is an example of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. She is from a small town in Texas, was so upset by the war that she retired as a school librarian a children's librarian, took her retirement funds, and moved to Washington, D.C. to run the Code Pink House. This is a woman of so much spirit, of so much integrity, and she got up close and personal